All right, welcome back to Getting Past the Premium, everybody. Excited for this conversation today with Ryan Garzon from Keys Coverage Insurance Services. We dive into how Ryan went from where he started in the industry to where he's at today, writing 2 million plus in revenue per year. That's revenue, and we hit everything in between. We kind of just jumped into this conversation, so we're gonna hop right in. But I hope everybody enjoys the episode today.
I didn't want to sound long and wordy, but in a nutshell, that is who we are. And we are that way because if we were business owners, that's what we want our service providers to treat us. I want to know it raw. And what
I
we
think that's
realize is when we present the options to the insured, they're like, all right, what would you do? And we're like, oh, we take this one. Okay, that sounds good. At that point, we also realize that they have trust in us to people say, oh, I want to have the consultative approach or I want to advise them. We do neither. We make the decision for them. You know, as a business, if they're focused on being a contractor or doing government jobs or increasing their sales or penetrating a market, that's what they should focus on. The idea of their insurance people working with us to make that decision is not the case. They're hiring us to act on their behalf. So we do so. I just renewed an account this week for about $1.8 million in renewal premium, a $450,000 increase over last year. They got no proposal. We got one phone call. We spoke for about 4 minutes.
Hmm.
I let them know what we're doing, why, but through delivering that message, they know we're confident. It's not a gimmick. We are confident. We know why this is best for them, and we know what we're going to do to fix this over the course of the next 12 months. And we laid that groundwork. And all we had to say is, hey, if this doesn't sound right to you, like lift your hand and say something or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's a lot of trust building that's happened leading up to that. But I think there's a lot of benefit to people listening. So I get a lot of folks that are in the shoes you were in when you were mentioned starting, right? Like you're writing the business that comes across your desk. Like you gotta keep the lights on type of thing, right? And don't know how to make that transition that you've made to where you're at today. And I think I would love for we can go back through that story and however much you want to
But
go
there's
into
also a
detail.
lot of transitions. You know what I mean? There's a
Yeah,
transition
that's a
of
good
I'm not
point.
going to go after the small account. I'm going to go after the bigger account. There's a transition of if I feel my agency sucks at getting quotes and putting forth that effort, how do I overcome that when I'm in front of an insured? The truth is, a
Yeah,
lot of these newer producers, they are very afraid to sort of take that, do something that's out of the box. They know what they're doing is not working, but they don't necessarily try something different. I've always gotten myself in trouble for doing things differently here. We're the only producing team where Miriam and she's not my assistant, I'm really hers now. And so people see that, and most agents aren't willing to split commission with somebody else. They want somebody to help them, but they don't want to split half the commission.
it's not an
They
abundance
count
mindset.
dollars. At this point, I think Miriam counted her dollars for the first 4 or 5 sales. After that, we just stopped counting because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, once the number gets big enough, you don't care, right?
Not necessarily. Once you know it's grinding in the right direction, then it's something you look at once a year, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
not. If you're making $50,000 a year and you're trying to get to 100, and there's a difference between you making 5 or 7, yeah, I guess. But if you're making $1 million plus a year and something's going to be 5 grand more, 5 grand less, that's not the focus. And then to be successful, you kind of have to narrow your focus to those things that help you bring in business and build those relationships. Everything else is just noise. And I feel a lot of producers are quick to be distracted by social media, distracted by checking LinkedIn, distracted by seeing how much commission came in, how does this compare to last year. If our numbers right now are double than they were last year, great, we have to improve. If they were
yeah,
the same as they were last year, great, we have to improve. If we 10x over last year, great, how are we going to improve? So if you know what the end game is, you don't look back.
yeah. You gotta have
You
that
don't.
growth mindset for sure. So maybe talk about how what is it about your personality that allowed you to do that, right? Like what hit you that made you say, okay, I'm writing the 5, 10, $20,000 premium bops, and now I've gotta up my game. I think is how you
Yeah,
put it or something like
right.
that.
So
Like
it didn't
what?
start that way. The way it started originally wasn't, oh, hey, do I write um, three $20,000 accounts or 100? And our mentality here in the office has been, you write all four.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Right. The real big shift for myself to write much larger accounts was when Miriam came on board. I realized she had so much to offer, and then as a business, with her having no insurance experience, it was very difficult to pay her $100 or $150,000 a year coming in right out of the gate. So the only potential way to get her at that number and past it as quickly as possible would be to share in the sales. And then for me, for it to make sense and invest that time to help build her, get her up to speed, and for it to work for both of us, the only way it would work is we couldn't be running down to Miami to go see a client, go visit them 3 meetings, and make $5,000 and split that 2 ways, 2,500 after taxes. We get $1,000.
yeah,
There's no way. It had to be to a point where those 3 trips would equate to maybe 30,000 in revenue for us as a team. And so it just, once you work the numbers backwards, you realize, okay, when you go out in an area and you're prospecting, before you make a call, you're just asking yourself, can this client be paying over $1 million? And if they are, let's call them. If they're not, move on.
yeah,
So you end up weeding out, which you probably can't do in the first 3 or 4 years, but by year 5, there's no reason why a producer can't weed out accounts that they know aren't paying over 100 grand. That doesn't mean don't write them. That just means don't pursue them. They fall on your lap, we write them. I wrote a $20,000 account yesterday, but I don't pursue them. But if I'm going to
yeah.
call,
That's
if
a
I'm
great
going to do
distinction for
research,
everybody.
right? If I'm going to spend the mental energy to focus on what could this person's potential problem be, um, it's because I feel at a bare minimum they pay $500,000 or $600,000 a year in insurance spend, with at
Yeah,
least 50,000 revenue to the agency, and that moves the needle for all of us, and that keeps us running. And so once Miriam came on, I realized she was great at all these things. So I'm like, okay, whatever you're not great at, I'll do. And she's like, I don't like making phone calls. Great, I make the phone calls. You do all else, and that's how it started.
yeah.
Now we're a team of about 10, and we're writing maybe 150 to 200 revenue a month just on our little team.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for everybody listening at home, do the math. That's 2 million in revenue a year for that team. So let's break that down a little bit. Ryan talked about when you're targeting or you're out prospecting, you're going after that 500-600 minimum account. How are you? What are you doing to get those opportunities? What's your prospecting look like?
Um, I've always been a fan of cold calling or calling direct. It just my cold calls don't sound cold because I'm not saying, "Hey, Elliot, this is Ryan from Keys Coverage Insurance." My calls are way more direct.
Mm-hmm.
Elliot, this is Ryan from Keys Insurance. Uh, we haven't spoken before. The reason for my call is because you're in this industry. We do the insurance for X people in your industry and your competitors. Joe from ABC Company was dealing with this issue. Blank, who you probably do know, and I'll pause and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I've heard of him. He's doing this and he had this issue. So I would assume a guy like you with this many vehicles, this many employees, your insurance spend is X amount of dollars. I'm making all these assumptions. So instead of asking them to give me information, I'm giving them assumptions, which show a couple things. One, I'm experienced. Two, I'm aware of the general template of the things he's dealing with. And three, I do other people in his business. So as they listen to what I'm telling them, they'll start correcting me.
Yep.
Oh, not so many. I got this. I don't have 150 employees anymore. I'm down to 100. And then I start to shape their picture a little better. Oh, so if you're that, then you're probably paying X amount of payroll. I'm really good with numbers off the top of my head. And so I start working the math out. And so they realize I'm able. And so I get a lot of attention off that first call. It's not the call isn't an exploration call, it's more direct. And then I'm not saying, hey, I'm going to save you money. We are Keys, we are services. It comes from a very humble spot. Say, hey, this is my situation. This is what I expect your situation is. I don't know what your insurance situation is. I don't know who your agent is. I don't know what agency you use. I don't know who you're with. But at the very least, if we were to meet and we know each other, I'm in your back pocket. So if you ever have a problem, I'm there for you. And that's what I'm looking for at the moment. And along the way, you get to see if you want to work with me. And then I kind of get to make my decision as to whether you're worth the time. And they love an approach like that. Or maybe they don't, but we've just been lucky that they've taken well to it. And so they'll meet with us, they'll have a meeting. Huh?
I think people resonate with that. Absolutely. It's,
Yeah,
you're
it's a
showing
very
value
fair
to them.
ask, and it's more of like a business person to business person ask,
Yeah.
right? And nobody wants to deal with an insurance agent that's just an employee. And the truth is here, maybe I wasn't a partner, 2 years ago before the transaction, but I would always speak to them as if I was, because in my mind, I wasn't a partner in the business, but I was the owner of the book of business because of all the amount of time we've been into. So maybe it was a mind fuck to myself to feel I'm an owner. But it made the world of difference in speaking to them because they were more respectful with their response because I valued myself more. So they sort of resonated and valued myself also. If a new producer is calling somebody and they're afraid, nervous, unsure, unprepared, it is a huge turn on. It's almost disrespectful to the person on the other line. Somebody calls you that they don't know what the hell they're doing. They're not on it.
Yeah.
They wasted my time. F you. But if you call and you're on point and you know what you're talking about, you're completely focused on what their business is and what's going on and how you think you could best help them, they're very receptive. And it has to be specificity. You can't use risk management, advice, all these big words that to you or I mean something. You got to speak to them like they're as dumb as you.
Directly.
You got to say, hey, the insurance, the auto insurance for your trucks, not the per unit count, but how many trucks you got, how much you're paying per truck. There's a coverage UN that you don't need to show on your certificates. It's an employee benefit. And just having these things that you can say to them that will resonate, and you're at their speed, and then they're going to put more thought into their response. If they feel they can't trust you, if they feel you don't know what you're doing, if they feel you're wasting their time, they have zero respect for you. Very difficult for anyone to be successful on the phones doing that.
I totally agree. Well, there's a definitely a level of confidence you need, and I know younger, more inexperienced producers can struggle with that, right? Just because they are inexperienced. But I think where you can gain confidence,
right? But it's a false assumption to assume a young producer is inexperienced. What they need to realize is they may be inexperienced as a producer, but maybe they have experience doing something else. That's what I faced with Miriam. She was inexperienced in insurance, but she came from an industry in aviation where she dealt with C-level suite people and owners of businesses. And so she had a lot of ability in communicating with these people with confidence. And so she was inexperienced in insurance, but not inexperienced in relationships. And so a lot of these new producers, maybe they're 40 years old into the business and it's new to them, or they're 35 or they're 30, and maybe insurance is new. But if they're 30 years old and it is new for them to talk to business owners, there's probably a lot of other issues that they've gone on with because they failed to develop themselves as they should.
Yeah.
And they need to look a little more inwardly at themselves and see why the hell they didn't prepare themselves better for life. They've obviously failed at something and failing to build meaningful relationships with people in business.
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree with that. That's a great point, a great distinction to make. And, where I was going to, if you are in that bucket where, you might be, have less confidence or whatever, I think a spot to go to get that is understand, and you've referenced this a few times, the value that you can bring and the help you can provide to your client, and be confident in that, be confident that you can help these people in many different areas. And that can give you confidence going to that call to, say the things that you were talking about, right?
There's also ways for you to detach yourself from it. You could say, hey, listen, the savings on the insurance is only going to be 100 grand. It's not that much money. Because for you or I it might be, but for the business owner who's running 4 million a year in payroll and has all these expenses, 100 grand really is a drop in the bucket. But you could say, hey, it's a start in the right direction, and your business is trading at a 10x multiple. So that $100,000 in savings to your EBITDA results in at least $1 million worth of value in your business, and that's a big improvement. And it's a way to continuously make the step in the right direction. And most agents don't talk that way to their
No.
clients. So it puts us in a much different bucket where we can really take all this business away because it's right for the picking.
Yeah, you start talking at a peer level, where the business owner now feels like you understand their business, and that's what I was going to highlight and how you
Well, it's
talked
not just
about.
that they feel like they know we do, because
Yeah,
we're in a similar boat. We're trying to grow our businesses the same way they do, but we also can explain how 2 + 2 = 7. I need to explain to them how us taking a $50,000 fee, saving them 100 grand, and increasing their value of their business by $1 million, plus being in their back pocket, is extremely valuable versus the guy that's just being a commodity and bringing them their renewal every year, and then trying to take them out to lunch.
do you do a lot of fee-based work instead
None,
of commission?
none.
Oh, I thought I heard you say you take a $50,000 fee. So you're referencing like how
Oh
much
no,
they're going to
yeah,
pay
I'll
you out of
tell
that.
them that how much commission we're taking
Got
as
it.
an agency
Which
as a
still I
dollar
think
amount.
is, yeah, I think you
Um,
should do that. I think that's great.
yeah,
So they
but
know.
but I take that back. I remember taking a fee maybe 10 years ago or something, like a $10,000 fee on something,
Yeah.
and it was more cumbersome to deal with accounting and explain to them what the hell we were doing than taking
Yeah.
the fee. So we take whatever the insurance company gives and
Yeah.
move on.
Yep. No, and that's, I think, pretty standard. But okay, so we've got now that opportunity. You've made the cold call. You're getting in front of the client. Walk through a little bit of how does your sales process work? How do you work that prospect
You
through
mean by sales
to
process, what we say in front of them, or what we do with the file when we get back to the office?
both, all of it? How do you
Um,
how do you connect with the client to get the information you need? What do you do back at the office? How do you present? Any and all things.
it depends the client. Some clients we might say, hey, thanks for all the policies. You're not that big of a client. Carlos in my office is going to put this into Hartford, into Nationwide. They're going to get you a little Bob. I'll look it over. He'll send it over to you. When you get it, you're going to be paying X amount of dollars. And if you're okay with it, just go through with it. We'll never see each other again. But I'm here if you need me. Some accounts we've spoken, Mary and myself, maybe another person on the part of the team that's been there at the meeting. It's okay, who's going to do this? And all right, I'm going to quote the ocean. You handle making the submission for the workers' comp, set up the loss control. Here's what our expectation is. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. These three coverages we'll leave alone because as long as we do these other three, these will take over. But we have that conversation while the insured is sitting at the table, sort of eavesdropping and listening in. It shows them how we are solving for them, and it kind of shows them, gives them an idea of the scope of work that's going to go on. And so if they feel uncomfortable in working with us, that's usually when they're going to interject or say, well, hey, wait, how about this? Or let me ask, or can you give me an estimation before you start moving that fast? And that's a sign to us, which is great. All right, pencils down. We'll answer your question. We'll give you what you want, but we're not moving forward until you're verbally committed. We don't need an AMR or anything, but if we're going to do the work, it's because we are expecting and you are expecting for us to move forward.
Yeah.
I think a lot of agents are just afraid to say that to a client because they're in fear that's going to backfire and they're not going to get the deal.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Do you think that comes from, or do you think it's the flip side of that? It's easier to say that when you can have the confidence knowing you've got, a full pipeline or more prospects behind that one, that if you don't get that deal, it's okay. Because I find that a lot with producers where I've got this one in front of me and I really need this one to hit my numbers for the year and whatnot, that they don't want to say the wrong thing, or they don't want to hold the client accountable to something because they're concerned that if they don't get this one, they won't, meet their quota or whatever.
Yeah, so listen, if you are a producer and you're concerned about meeting quota, you're in the wrong business. Quota is really for management to see whether you've chosen to do your job. If you are just meeting quota, do this for a few more months, but find something else to do because this is not for you long term. Seriously, any producer who's just meeting quota is not valuable to any agent, to any agency, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we want our producers to bring in about $1.5 million premium as a baseline. And if they're doing that or below, they really don't belong here. They're really
yeah.
slowing us down. Because if the ones that are performing are growing at a clip of 20, 25% a year, 15% a year, and you have somebody that's kind of just like growing at a 5% increment, they're watering down the growth of the agency. And they should work in an old mom and pop spot where they could just sit on a book and make a few bucks. That's really where they belong.
So you're gonna have a lot of people out there that are gonna ask a lot of questions around that. Not that I disagree with you. What would you tell that producer that wants to and probably has the drive to put up those kinds of numbers, but might be in a spot where they just don't quite know how. They haven't connected the dots on the how yet. What would you tell to those producers?
Reach out to me, reach out to producers out there that that are, ask them for a 15-minute conversation and just ask for the help because I've connected with a lot of producers through LinkedIn, some smaller than some larger than
we
myself.
Met. Yeah.
Right. And they have really good ideas. They do things differently than I do, and I've learned from them and they've learned from me. And we're more than willing to help each other. It's not adversarial. All right. If you're listening to this, that shows you're interested. If you then follow this by action, it shows you're willing to make a change. And just understand a lot of the changes that are going to happen have to do more with you personally, not with the agency you're in or the geographic location you're in, or the type of business you've typically gone after. Because we've gone into different segments and industries and done different things we hadn't done before, and then created a whole group of clients in the segment that we hadn't done in the prior years. Don't limit yourself to what you think your practice or your niche is. If you're in this business, your niche should only be insurance. Many times it's the same policy, but from one industry to the other, the only difference is a rating basis, certain coverage forms, certain key coverages that will differ. But you could be a manufacturer, you could be a contractor or distributor. You're in a 100,000 square foot building, you still need a property policy, with wind, and that has nothing to do so much with you. Occupancy could affect rate, but the coverage is still the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a little bit of that, or like the biggest difference there is what you were talking about earlier, right? Of being able to connect and resonate with that business owner at the business owner level, right? So that you can speak that language and they know what you're talking about. You can show that you know what you're talking about early on. You're an expert, etc. But then I think you're right. Because we hear all this niche stuff right now, which I don't disagree with, but I'm kind of in your camp where your niche can be either insurance, can be a certain insurance coverage. It doesn't have to be an industry, I guess is what I'm trying to say,
Correct. And then the more industries the stronger you become because you'll see how certain things correlate. And then to your comment about speaking to the owner, I'm all with that. But just understand some of the times you're not selling to the owner. Sometimes it's a CFO or a controller or HR person. Yeah. And so you kind of have to get on their level also. And then the next thing is you don't, I could see a producer listening to this and like, oh, well, I'm not experienced yet, or I'm not an expert yet. Right. So neither are we, and we're not there yet, but we just stick around the certain areas that we do know. And on the areas that we don't know, what we do show is we show how little we know, but how we are committed to finding out. So when we ask a question that we don't know, we don't run around the question. We'll just be like, we don't have a damn clue, but we know who to call, who to ask. Let us do research. We'll get back to you. And we do the research, we learn, and we get back to them. And they much rather somebody who's honest, says, I don't know, and figures it out, and what your think process is behind it, than someone that tries to dance around answering the question, and then you lose a lot of trust with the client.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Be confident in saying, I don't know, but I will find out. You'll you'll gain way more respect from people in general in your life than trying to BS your way through a conversation.
Yeah, and then as a producer, you got to understand that if you're really committed to being successful in this business, you got to be committed to being successful in business overall. Because as a producer, you're also a troubleshooter. You're managing that relationship. So yeah, you can make the sale, but that's the easy part. Then something goes bad with the relationship. It's your job to be able to jump in and troubleshoot at each segment and see what's going wrong. You're not the person doing the certificates. You're not the person doing the loss control. So when something goes wrong, you got to be the one that's able to troubleshoot.
Yep. Totally agree. Well, so Ryan, anything that we haven't covered that, again, if you're sitting in maybe your shoes 10, 12 years ago that you wish you would have known that we can, impart on anybody listening that, you feel would be valuable to those that might be in those shoes?
I think words are very strong, and I believe in manifestation. And I would sort of wait for things to happen to see them to be true. And I learned how to sort of speak it, say it, become it, and do it. And it kind of puts yourself in a situation where I would tell clients before we bought out the agency, hey, listen, it's either we're going to leave and start off on our own, or we're going to buy out the agency. And I probably said it for a year and a half before it actually happened. Same thing with accounts and saying, hey, listen, this account, 20,000 revenue, you're not that large, you're not that important to this, but you mean to us for this reason. We want the relationship. There's accounts I've told them, listen, we're going to take $25,000 in revenue to the agency. We're really going to make X amount. But the reason I want to do your business is because you are a special printer in the area. Everyone knows you. And when I go into a print shop, I want to be able to say I was able to help you. I'm going to get more business because I do business with you than the revenue on the account.
Yeah.
And telling that and sharing that with clients and then understanding it to be true, they're okay with you making money, but they don't want you to be interested in a relationship just for money. So you got to have your reason. And any reason is valid except for I just want to make a few bucks.
That's great.
You want the relationship because of the industry. You want to, we tell people our biggest fear isn't losing their account. Our biggest fear is getting an email from them or a call and them saying, hey, you let us down. And Miriam's crying and I'm crying because we're really hurt. But you say, hey, you lost the insurance because I sold my business for $50 million. We're as happy as can be. And we're happy to have been a part to get you there. And them knowing that goes a long way. They want partners like that are going to be with them by their side when they're winning.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, Ryan. I appreciate your time. How can, if anybody does want to reach out to you, as you mentioned, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Email, cell phone,
LinkedIn,
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn,
all the above.
SOS signs.
Yeah. Send them some smoke signals. Yeah.
Oh, it was great. Where are you based out of, by the way?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, geez. Do you know Warren Buffett?
Right in the middle. I do not know Warren. I cannot say that I know him personally. I've seen him around, but Berkshire Days is coming up though, so this will be a circus in Omaha for a few days, but it's pretty fun.
Oh, I really appreciate you helping out the younger producers. I started with the LinkedIn videos, and because we've been so busy, I had to put that aside because I saw my teammates getting bombarded with work, and I felt I wasn't carrying the load as I should. But once this is all said and done, and we have a couple of things that we need to get settled down, I'll probably get back to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I enjoyed them, so look forward to that and appreciate your time. So we'll catch everybody on the next one.
All right, Elliot. Thank you so much.
Thanks.